was tabled before the National Assembly, the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning went to the House on the Hill and made the quote-unquote concessions through a press statement before the report was actually tabled before Parliament. What does that tell you? That tells you because the executive does not make laws, but the fact that parliamentarians from the ruling party went to the House on the Hill and the chairperson of the finance of Parliament was actually watered down. I would say the delegated power of the people to the representatives. I don't know if that's still the representatives, but it is quite disheartening that the representation is not actually seen. So Parliament of today, the 13th Parliament, is more or less like an extension of the executive because it's hard to decipher between Parliament and executive because when you make some of these grievances, parliamentarians do not actually factor them in. So how do we draw a balance rather between representation and of course oversight of on the executive excesses? And the role of lawyers in addressing this is anchored under Section 4 of Cap 18 of the laws of Kenya. And it states clearly that lawyers or advocates need to assist the government even through legislation. And we've seen a couple of legislation that are being either tabled before Parliament. Some of them are too punitive to the common man. And the Finance Bill 2024 perhaps was just the ticking time bomb. So it has been like a snowball that grows before it completely crashes on the citizens. So my worry would be, how does the 13th Parliament actually redeem itself? Because whatever the Parliament does necessitates these particular protests. And of course, I mean, in collaboration with the executive and accountability, transparency, and our public debt of today, which I think stands at around 11.35 trillion as at March of this year, and Parliament is largely to be blamed on our fiscal indiscipline to begin with. And this has, of course, has a ripple effect on the cost of living on the citizens. And that is why you would see them on the street because to put food on the table is actually so hard. And when Parliament breached the debt ceiling by amending the Public Finance Act, I think that was the beginning of our downfall. And I can't remember any other statute that perhaps has gone through more amendments than the Public Finance Management Act. And it's so disheartening because our debt stock is actually unsustainable. So we would keep on, borrowing each and every time. So I think, Honorable Kaluma, it will be in our delight if parliamentary, and especially the 13th Parliament, well, I still have that modicum of hope in them. And if you can redeem yourselves in the next 2 years, then we can have a conversation. But as of now, what we see for the 13th Parliament is you don't listen to the people. You may have our intentions at heart, but the instructions are always different. So as I wrap up my submission, I would just like to close by what Socrates once said in an argument against Thomas Hobbes' social contract theory. Now, when the social contract becomes frustrated, then it means there's no agreement between the sovereign, who are the people, and the crown. When they say the crown can do no wrong, literally, that is what is replicated in our own system of today. So when Socrates said that he would rather stay in prison and accept the death penalty rather than escape and go into exile in another Greek city, what he meant is, even if he were to go to say Kiambu of Durban or even Garissa or wherever, that burden that weighs on every Kenyan will still be on his shoulders. So it will be my humble submission that we rewrite our narrative, that you as an advocate, Honorable Kalum, and of course you have so many of your colleagues in the 13th Parliament. How do you restore the trust that has been eroded? And how do you bridge the gap, that has been widening each and every time between the parliament and the citizens who are the ultimate sovereign? With that, I do humbly submit. Thank you.
you very much, PLO, the resident speaker with big English. But Mr. Duncan, I know you want to weigh in on what PLO and Polycarp have spoken to, and because much has been targeted towards the National Assembly, we'll have Honorable Peter Kaluma come back in after you finish. Daktari.
Okay, I'll be very brief. One, Nyamodi brought something, Advocate Nyamodi, that right to picket peaceably. Now, isn't it oxymoron that all we hear is the ones who are in the street are angry? I don't know to what extent can somebody be peaceable or peaceful if they are angry. In other words, the Constitution does not give qualification to being in the street and to picket. Whether you are angry, whether you are mad, like a mad dog, whether you have no good reason at all, it's a right you can enjoy. You can come. There is no criteria or a super legislature who check on why you are in street and see whether you are there for legitimate reason or not. So the emphasis on the angry Kenyans are in the street is not necessary in law, or it's not a prerequisite to exercise that right. But it raises to me an issue whether that person who is angry, and so angry as we saw others even saying, I'm ready to die, whether that person can be peaceful. Perhaps one of the qualifications is go to the street before you are angry, because that way you can exercise that right in a way that is peaceful, because it is an oxymoron to be peaceful and angry at the same time. I'm just coming back at this narrative of people are angry. That's not a requirement to being in the street or to picket. And if that is where, if it's a matter of where to exercise anger, let us find another source in the Constitution, but not the right to picket is not meant for people who are angry or because you are angry. It is because you are peaceful and you have a reason, whether you are angry or not. Number two, when you look at the local context of even the limitation we get in ICCPR and whatever, you know very well that the Supreme Court have defined this element we have of our sources of law, where the international law comes in, and where the drafters made a mistake of even talking of the law of nation, or whether it has become customary law. I think that's what they were talking about, whether it's international customary law. The entire ICCPR has not risen to international customary law. And you know the Kenya Court of Appeal, in the case of Mitubel, were very clear that our sovereignty extend to our law. And we're telling Judge, especially Judge Mumbi, that, you know, you are very bright legal mind. This thing of adopting and being adopted by international standard, anything UN, anything, whatever becomes source of law is not proper. Just make our law endogenous and indigenous law. That's the Supreme Court goal. So I don't think that in our local context, the right to picket under ICCPR is even as advanced as we are one of the few nations where the right to picket is anchored in the Constitution. So the ICCPR is way below where Kenya provision is, and therefore the solution must be local. But I think in my conclusion, as I respond, you know, we are mixing move from Kenya. That is external. That is extreme. And you know, when it is administered under international law, under the Congo case and whatever, it's only extreme. So when we talk of internal, and internal is how to talk to your leaders, including picketing, then there is no so much place for collective responsibility of talking of this parliament that. Because the Constitution has said people can recall their member of parliament. So this idea where we only talk of, and you know that that's where people are represented, but they are representing each individual constituency. Now, the Constitution has even gone as far as giving you how to recall that person. Nobody wants to do that. But we quickly come, as we sing in our SDA church, prone to wonder, Lord, I feel it, of blanket condemnation. This parliament is up to no good. Now, let me ask you, let me give you the best of your argument, the lawyer from PLO farm, that let's give the argument that this is the worst bunch of parliamentarians. Voted by others representing all these other people, constituencies that voted for them, is a bunch of people in the street, better representative of what Kenyans think than that parliament. So that we are saying, as the PLO lawyer is telling us, that the parliament has failed. Now, these people who have come, whether we come from our neighborhood in Kasarani or wherever, 100 of us, and we get to the street and say now, because the people like Kaluma have failed, who are voted by the people, who represent the people, and we think they're up to no good. Now, this group of mine from today are now going to come with ideas that are universally acceptable. Who then sit and check whether my idea is more acceptable? Is it in the X space? Is it in the Twitter because I put it in Twitter and I have 100 followers? Is what I'm doing better at representing and carrying the people's voices than the house of the people? But this is the culture of hypocrisy of Kenyans, that we bash institutions. When we want them, we go for them. When we don't want them, we bash judiciary, we bash parliament, we bash the government. You know, in other places, everyone working for government, they start by saying, thank you for your service to us. We are always bashing our institution and reducing it to the individual in there, not knowing that we're actually weakening our mechanism of check and balance, so that we glorify the individual. And as I started, and as they say, when one finger is pointing, four fingers is pointing at the pointer. The four fingers is, are Kenyans living according to constitutionalism? Are Kenyans living according to rule of law? And the answer is clear, no. Look at the chaos, even when people come to the street to picket. But quickly it turns to these parliamentarians. There is individual responsibility. Let us not blanket bash the parliamentarians. We have even a right to recall, and let us look at each one. And still at its worst, it is better than a bunch of people in the street telling us, now ignore parliament, we are representing you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. I don't see the MP for Homa Bay. I don't know, I think he could have dropped at some point. Please, I see him logged in, but he doesn't have the mic. Mahesh, if you can request the mic, and we'll enable you. And Nyamori, would you please respond to that as we enable Mahesh?
Yeah. Allow me to, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, allow me to respond to the question it does not grant unlimited freedom. It explicitly acknowledges that states may impose restrictions, provided they are, one, prescribed by law, pursue a legitimate aim, e.g. public safety, and are necessary and proportionate. And I think this is what Honorable Kaluma, and this is what Dr. Duncan Ojwang, and this is what I am raising, that we can pursue regulation of the exercise of Article 37 by prescribing it in law, by ensuring that we pursue only legitimate aim. For instance, what we saw on Wednesday calls for actions to ensure public safety. I don't know whether it's true. I just read that the storming of a police station resulted in, death of 3 suspects in a cell. So the other day we were making noise about Ojwang, who sadly died in a police cell, and we are hoping that the people who are responsible will finally be punished according to law. But then here that hooligans have, for political or other reasons, stormed a police station, set fire on vehicles and on the building, and tried to storm and access the armory. And it has resulted in the death of 3 people who were supposed to be safe in a police cell. And then there is an argument that we cannot prescribe a way of regulating conduct of such hooligans when people are exercising the right to Article 1. So in my view, that right can be restricted. And then the Public Order Act is part of the legal framework. So Public Order Act makes provisions for prior notice, for routes to be approved, and for assigning liabilities. And if Public Order Act, therefore, is part of our legal framework, then it satisfies the requirement of General Comment number 37. And these are not violations of any rights in any case, but will be tools to balance freedom with order, which would be necessary for all of us to, exercise our rights. Now, the state's responsibility versus individual rights is something that I believe that we need to look at. And the state's responsibility, the state has a duty to protect all persons, not just protesters, from violence, disruptions, and lawlessness. I listened to the MP for Kikuyu, who is the majority leader, saying that his 105 years old father and 85 years old mother was subjected to harassment, and a crowd went there to, in his words, to murder them simply because he holds a political view. Whatever view that the MP may be holding cannot allow anybody to use the excuse of Article 1 and Article 37 to go and threaten the lives of a 105-year-old.
Nyamori, I think we lost. I might have lost you at the tail end, but allow me to bring in Mahesh.
Sorry,
Honorable Peter Kalu.
Can I just?
Oh, yeah, okay.
1 minute.
Yes.
Yes, I think you may have lost me when I was referring to the DPP versus Ziegler, which is a 2021 case in the UK. It says that the right to protest is protected, but may be limited where it interferes with the rights of others for public safety. And then as I finish, it is also important that we look at the UN guidelines, the US guidance, that is GC 37, which at paragraph 15 provides that organizers are expected to comply with lawful requirements. And then paragraph 84 which provides the state may use proportionate force to prevent violent assemblies or and restore order. And so my view is that the bottom line is that sovereignty is not equal to license for lawlessness, and that the right to protest is not equal to the right to riot, and that Kenya must uphold the rule of law and not mob justice. And to do that, it is also important to appreciate that when the CS for internal security, maybe the way what he said came out may have not come out well, but what the CS was speaking about is in law. It is in law because the police is allowed in law, and we should not teach our children the police is not allowed. Police is allowed to use lethal force in certain elements where the life of the policemen and lives of several policemen were under attack in the last few days. And then when protecting property, when protecting protected areas, including police stations, and so on and so forth.
By the sharing of perspectives on the forum, as I said, the time has come for us to make a law to better secure the enjoyment of the rights under Article 37 of the Constitution beyond the Public Order Act and based on our experiences. And so let me just confirm that I'm keenly listening. I'm happy this conversation is being recorded. I'll be making contact with a number of us who have spoken here, including Brother Joshua Nyamori, has some very good references, which I know will enrich, that law, which, as I've said, must be enacted this time. Duncan Ojuang, Professor Gada, and of course, Stephen Bugu and all other participants. I will listen through to the end, even when I later break. Number two is just to emphasize that there have been several attempts in the past to have a law, guiding the exercise of rights under Article 37 enacted by Parliament. I think the last endeavor was by Honorable Rocco, now the CS in charge of labor. I personally opposed, those endeavor because they were not being brought as bills seeking to limit the rights as required by Article 24, but they were approaching the matter, differently. So let me just emphasize to fellow learned friends that every time I've said I want to pursue a legislative agenda, I've never gone back. We now have the Companies Act, we have the Insolvency Act, we have the Marriage Act, we have the Matrimonial Properties Act, and several other enactments because of the farmer position some of us, including myself, took then in the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. So this one must be enacted. I dispatched a note to the Speaker yesterday, setting the parameters, which I see out of this deliberation we are going to expand. And so let me encourage our colleagues within the Noble Law Society to send views either to me or through the council as we put together the text of the bill, and even later when we go to public participation when the bill is published, because that ideally is one of the things the respective statute. So let us have that, public duty being discharged in terms of, setting the parameters. And of course, I'll be making those references. Number three is just to emphasize that there is nothing Parliament does which can be undertaken without public participation. The courts have already defined and always defined must be meaningful. No single thing can be done by Parliament that does not go through public participation. This is a requirement as a value and principle of governance under Article 10 of the Constitution, and it is also a requirement under Article 108 and 118 in terms of parliamentary procedure. The problem we've had as an institution, and I'm saying this out of experience, is that sometimes the people in the know do not come forth with information to aid Parliament in making laws or making decisions for posterity in the manner contemplated by the Constitution. There are cases, and I know the Council of the Law Society of Kenya will confirm, that we've even waited for views of individual lawyers and you don't get them. To an extent that in some instances we've had to, write to the Law Society, for the views of the society to be brought aboard. And in a number of those circumstances, we've been enriched by those views. The request I'm making is that maybe we need a committee or a subcommittee of the Law Society that can be more intensely and intricately interacting with Parliament on matters legislation, because all bills being enacted by Parliament or motions are normally notified at first reading, and they are all on the website. So let us, in the discharge of our duty under our foundational act, be giving these views. And I can tell you, I've been in Parliament, in the 11th Parliament, 12th Parliament, 13th Parliament. I can say without any fear of contradiction that comparatively the current Parliament is more engaged than those previous parliaments. Maybe Parliament could be failing on their public relations and in the manner in which they present the undertakings to the public. But I can tell you, this is the Parliament which sits, you remember, like yesterday, we were sitting up to midnight. Every Wednesday today, unlike before, we sit up to 9 p.m. And you get Parliament engaged, very actively. Look at the legislations and their impacts in terms of number and in terms of their impact to the society, the matters they're dealing with. The number of bills that the current Parliament has been enacting are way beyond double the bills enacted by those, parliaments in each session, in each particular instance. So I want to assuage those of us who believe that